Hi, I'm Yegi. I'm an entrepreneur and success coach who wants it all. Family, luxury, career, and the freedom to do whatever I want, whenever I want. And I'll do whatever it takes to get there. I created the Yegi project to document my journey and inspire others to do the same. My mission is to change the world by influencing and leading others to do what they love and live fulfilled lives. Hello. Welcome back to the Yegi Project. Today's honored guest is Wayne Mullins, who is the founder of Ugly Mug Marketing, the creator of Freelance Accelerator, and the author of Full Circle Marketing. Wayne is not only an entrepreneur, but he is a husband and a father of 4. Now, his out-of-the-box thinking has also inspired clients from over 100 industries, and he has worked with directly influenced more than 250,000 entrepreneurs a year. Now, Wayne, welcome. I'm so excited to interview you. Please tell us in your own words, who are you and what do you do?
Thank you so much. I'm excited for our chat today. As you said, I think it's important to lead with, I'm a husband and father of 4, because at the end of the day, that's what really matters. All the business stuff is fun, it's exciting, and it's challenging, but it's our families that mean the world to us, and they're the ones that we do all of this work for. So,
that's beautiful.
Thank you. I love my kids, love my family, and I love what I get to do every day, which is lead and grow this really amazing team here at Ugly Mug Marketing, where we work with clients across the United States and occasionally around the world.
That's beautiful. Now, how did you get started in that line of work? What's your story? How did you end up here today?
Sure. So the way I ended up here today, if we rewind the tape and go backwards, is that in 2003, I decided to start a lawn and landscape company. And over the course of a 3-year period, I grew that into the largest lawn and landscape company in our entire region. And as a result of that growth over those 3 years, other business owners started coming to me and saying, hey, we see how much you've grown your business. What are you doing? How are you growing this rapidly? And the answer was marketing. We were doing some very unique, very creative marketing things. And so those conversations kind of slowly turned into consulting work, marketing consulting, which then slowly turned into this idea of, hey, what if I decided to do this, get out of the lawn care business and did this full time?
Wow, that's awesome. Now, did you have any background in marketing? Did you go to school for marketing, or did it just come natural to you? What is your relationship to marketing?
So my degree is in marketing, and I've always been passionate about, really, I guess you could say, human psychology, because at its core, marketing is about persuasion, it's about influence, and those two things boil down to human psychology and
really
the way
does.
the way we all make decisions, right? So that was what was so fascinating to me. And that's what led me, I guess, back down that path and what keeps me so interested and excited about it today.
Awesome. Okay, so before we dive into marketing, because this is a topic that all entrepreneurs want to talk about and can improve on, and I'm excited to pick your brain about it. But before that, let me get to know you a little bit better. Some fun icebreaker questions. Answer whatever comes first, okay? So what is your most favorite place on earth currently?
Most favorite place on earth? That's a tough one, but if I had to say one place, I would actually say Santa Barbara, California.
Nice. What is the best thing you read recently? It could be a book, article, meme, anything.
The best I've read, it's not so recent, but I return back to it on a regular basis is a book called The Mountain Is You.
Ooh, that book I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, had profound impact on me. It's not really a business book. It's a book that's about overcoming self-sabotage.
Oh, okay. We all can use that. We all have to go through that growing pain.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Your favorite way to spend your free time?
Free time with family. We're a very active family. 3 of my kids are active in jiu-jitsu. And for example, last night was dad's at the dojo. And so they got to beat me up a little bit while we were there. Spending time with them, we hang out a lot. We do a lot of activities together. Outside of family, I would probably say motorcycle rides. I have a motorcycle and a dirt bike, and I enjoy just being out in the silence, no distractions, and enjoying the ride.
Wow, cool. How old are your kids, boys, girls?
So my oldest is 17, my youngest is 11, and I have 3 boys, and then the baby is a girl. So she's 11.
Awesome. All right. Now, are you an early bird or a night owl?
I am by nature probably more of a night owl, but I force myself to be an early bird.
Why is that?
Well, as you know, my wife and I were raising our 4 kids. What I quickly discovered was that if you wanted
they wake up too early. You have no choice but to be an early bird.
If you wanted some time carved out for yourself, the only way I could get that time was to get up early. And so 5 a.m. is my wake up time. 7 days a week, 365 days a year, including holidays, including vacation. I protect that time.
Perfect. Now, is there something that most people don't know about you?
I think in the business context, most people don't know how much of an introvert I really am. Personally, people know that. You know, if they're close to me, they know that. But in the business world, most people don't know that I'm extremely introverted.
Well, I guess it's a good thing that you know, that's not so obvious in the marketing world. Awesome. Now, if you can change one thing with the magic wand, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
I think the first thing that would come to mind is this whole idea that comfort kills. It kills our dreams. It kills our goals. It kills so many wonderful things in our lives. And the problem is, by nature, by human nature, we seek comfort. We don't want to be uncomfortable. And certainly here in the Western world, that is, prevalent. We can't, work out unless we go to a gym that's air conditioned. We take escalators instead of stairs. We always seek comfort, but all the things that are valuable in life, all the things that have significant meaning, require us to be uncomfortable. So if I could just help enough other people understand that the thing that you desire is on the other side of your comfort.
So get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Now, have you had a challenge? Well, I'm sure you've had a challenge. Everybody has some sort of a challenge, but what has been your biggest challenge so far in your personal or business life? And what have you done to overcome it?
So the biggest challenge I've ever faced and still face is the person who looks back at me in the mirror every morning. It's that person that is the biggest obstacle to me reaching my goals, to me being the husband that I want to be, or the father or the leader that I want to be. It's that person that likes to deceive me, that likes to make excuses for myself and say, haven't you done enough? Or, whatever that long list of excuses that comes to mind. And so the most important thing I've done to overcome that is I've learned to understand this concept called the Johari window. You can Google this. It's Johari, Johari window. And it's a matrix that basically says there's this whole section of our lives where we are unconscious to certain things, but other people are conscious or aware of those things. And so the way that I've learned to overcome that is to hire people who are willing and brave enough to tell me the things that I may not want to hear, but I really need to hear in order to help me get to where I want to get to.
Oh, that's awesome. Honestly, I've learned that along the way of entrepreneurship too. We can't do it alone, and we definitely need people to complement our weaknesses and help us work through it, right? Or do the things that we are not good at and point them out. Now, you've mentioned the family life that's so important to you. And on this podcast, it is an entrepreneur's podcast. However, we are huge on happiness and the balance between the family life, the work life, to make sure that ultimately we reach our goal of happiness or fulfillment. Now, what has been your kind of not secret, but what has been the things you've learned along the way in order to achieve a happy life in your home and in your business?
Sure. I would say that a few things come to mind with this question. That number one, I'm not a huge believer in this idea of work-life balance. I know it's kind of a buzzword, and I know a lot of people love talking about this idea of work-life balance, but at least from my perspective, my life is typically never in balance, right? I believe that we go through seasons, and in certain seasons, my business may demand more of me, right? It may require more of me. In other seasons, my family may demand, and I use that term, figuratively here, but may demand more of me or require more of my time. And what I think happens is we beat ourselves up often because we believe that our lives should be in perfect balance, and they never are. So what happens is when we believe that to be the ideal, when we're at work, we're thinking about how we should be spending time with our family. And when we're with our family, we're thinking about how we need to be working on something and sending the proposal or doing the thing. And so we end up being our own worst enemies because we've bought into this myth of everything's got to be perfectly balanced. Instead, I love the idea of the seasons, right? Because then I understand that it's a season that I'm in. Now, with seasons, though, we have to be careful that we aren't deceiving ourselves there in believing that for the next 12 years, the season is grow my business, right? Because in nature, seasons don't occur that way. Seasons occur for a period of time, and then a new season is ushered in. And I think that's the beauty of the way we could model our lives based on the way nature changes seasons.
Oh, I love that. I love the seasons scenario or metaphor for business alone and life alone as well. Sometimes things are great, sometimes they're okay, sometimes they're horrible. And I do believe everything goes in seasons, but I haven't heard it being used together. Like one area of your life can be at a different season, the other area of your life could be at a different season, and that's totally okay. Now, what does a happy and fulfilled life look like to you today? It sounds like you've took some time, you've thought about, what is going to make you happy, and that's how you've been able to be successful overall. What does a happy and fulfilled life look like to you today?
Yeah, I think for me, that looks like autonomy over how I get to spend my time day in and day out. I think the other part of that is that I believe that happiness isn't in the destination, as cliche as this sounds, but it's in the day-to-day moment.
Yeah.
And I actually posted just this morning on Instagram story. It was at 5 something this morning when I was enjoying my first cup of tea. And I was just so grateful for that moment. And I found happiness and peace in that moment, in the quietness of that morning. And I think sometimes we kick happiness or fulfillment down the road to an event, right? So it's like, I'm going to be happy when we're on the vacation, or I'm going to be happy when I earn a certain amount of money. And the reality is, if our happiness is always wrapped up in a figure or a number or an event, we will always be chasing it. Because once we have the vacation, right, then we're unhappy again until we have the next vacation. Or if it's about a personal income level, once we get to that level, I've yet to meet a single person who reaches a certain income level and says, oh, that's it, I'm perfectly happy here. No, we strive for more, we long for more. So for me, it's shifting that from an event or a number or a figure into the present moment and into finding peace and fulfillment, even in the conversation like we're having right now.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And honestly, that's such a great place to be able to be present and enjoy the moment no matter what, right? Not worry about the past or the future, really enjoy the moment and see the best in that moment. Now, I've worked on myself a lot to get there, and I'm sure you have too. It doesn't come natural to us as human beings. Somehow we're programmed to want to have more or to focus on the future or worry about the past because we think that could change. Now, what have you done to get to this mindset? Because I personally believe that you have to be this way in order to be successful. It's huge. You need to work towards to be present in order to be happy, and then happiness will lead to more success. That's what I think. Now, what have you done to kind of get to this place? And has your mentality been different in the past that has gotten in your way of success?
Yeah, absolutely. So I completely agree with you. Like, I've had to spend a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money working on myself. By nature, by default, I am quote unquote, a typical entrepreneur. I'm never satisfied with what's today, right? I want something bigger. I want something better. I want the big picture stuff. So I've had to do a lot of work internally. And again, back to kind of the question you asked earlier, the most challenging person that I always have to deal with is the person who looks back at me in the mirror. And that is the person that I've got to carve out time for. That is the person that needs the most work, right? It's easy to look around and look at all the other people and point out all the quote unquote things they need to change or the things they need to fix. But I think the best place to start is with the person in the mirror.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Now, this next question is, what does a typical day look like for you? So we already know you rise at 5, maybe you have your tea. What does a typical day look like to you, and how do you protect time for yourself?
Absolutely. So for me, it's about the early morning, protecting that time for myself. But just a quick overview of like a typical work day for me. I get up at 5, hot cup of decaf tea, and there's a reason for that.
What's the reason?
So there's this great, I think he's a neurologist, Andrew Huberman, who's got a podcast, and he talks about the effects of caffeine within the first hour to hour and a half in the morning, and how if you delay caffeine consumption until after that, it will prevent afternoon crashes. In other words, you won't have that afternoon lull. And ever since I shifted, because I used to be a coffee first thing in the morning, ever since I shifted that and delayed my first cup of coffee until I've been up for a couple hours, I no longer get tired in the afternoons. It's the craziest thing.
I'm going to have to try that. I've been really good and bad with the first thing coffee thing. I was really good at it when everything was more, I guess, quiet in the house. Now I have baby and toddlers. So now it's like, okay, first thing coffee. But I'm definitely going to try to, this is a good reminder to try to work on that habit again.
Yeah, give it a try. I do a decaf tea, hot tea first thing in the morning. So, it's still the slow process of sipping the hot beverage. And
yes.
So I start with that. I journal, I meditate, I pray, I read. That's all before 6 a.m. 6 a.m. I work out. 7 o'clock, get ready for work. And then what I attempt to do every single morning, so I work at, typical quote unquote 8 to 5 job here. My role as CEO, founder, but I work kind of 8 to 5. I try to protect the morning time for me to work on things that require a lot of mental capacity. So if I have something that I'm having to write, I try to protect that time first thing in the morning to do the writing things or do the things that require a lot of mental energy. Because what I know is as the day wears on, this decision fatigue starts to take its toll. I get more easily distracted in the afternoons because there's a million things that have already taken place.
Yeah. I think that was like a thing, right? A lot of big CEOs, there's only a number of good decisions that we can make in a day, so we better make them count. So a lot of people that's why they prefer to wear the same outfits or same type of routine, just to make sure they're leaving those decision-making powers for something that's going to count towards their business. So that's great advice for our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. Then I typically do a lunch. I try to do a lunch meeting every single day, Monday through Friday. That way I can accomplish 2 things at once, right? Eat my lunch and accomplish something in a meeting. Afternoons are a lot of times meetings scheduled, interviews scheduled, things like that don't require lots of mental, thought process behind them. In other words, like creating content, etc. And then the evenings are protected. So from the time I leave 5 o'clock until I go to bed, which I go to bed early because I get up early, until I go to bed, it's family time. So I don't bring work home. I try not to get on computers, try not to get on phones, all that stuff so that we can be present together as a family.
Love that so much. Awesome. Now, I want to jump right into marketing or industry specific questions. So first off, for our listeners who are new to the entrepreneur world, what is the difference between branding and marketing?
Yeah, I love this question. So I think, branding, marketing, advertising often get used as if they were the same thing, right? People will say they're doing advertising or they're doing branding or they're doing marketing, and they often believe they're doing the same thing. The way that I love to think about this is that marketing is your ability to attract and to keep customers. That's what marketing is. Branding is a piece or component of your marketing. Advertising is a piece or component of your marketing. And so when we think about branding, branding has a lot to do with perception and shaping other people's perception about us. The biggest mistake I see people making when it comes to their branding is their branding is very inauthentic. And what I mean by that is this, that someone will be new in business and they'll say, I want my branding, my imaging, my logo, all of that. I want to be very professional. I want to be very elegant, very classy. I want to resemble high end. Great, wonderful, no problem. We can do that. We create that brand for them. But then when people call the number on their card or call the number on their website, they don't answer their phone. They don't have voicemail set up. They don't return the phone call or the voicemail for 3 days, right? So on the one hand, we're showcasing that we're high end, that we're exclusive, that we're expensive. But on the other hand, the way we actually live out that,
perceive us.
Yeah, the way we live that out, we have just completely discredited our brand. And so when we think about branding, we need to make sure that we're being authentic through and through, from the way we present our logo, our website, to the way our service matches that brand.
Wow, I love the way you explained that, honestly. And it's just kind of like a light bulb moment for me right now. I'm like, I could see that happening. If somebody is more casual type of a business and that's the type of clients they want to attract, they might be a good fit. There's a lot of people who want to do business with casual businesses. They don't like the full format professional, and there are customers for those businesses. But if I'm a casual business and I'm representing myself as a luxury business, I'm going to be attracting the luxury clients. But when they reach out to me, we're not going to be a match. So it's almost like doing a disservice. And I never thought about it that way. And I'm glad we're talking about it.
You're spot on. And again, you have to understand that the image that you have or that you want to portray for your brand may not be the image that your audience wants or needs. So it's really important to get in tune with your audience. And there's a couple of ways we love to teach to do this. Number one is to create a customer avatar. So a customer avatar is simply a fictitious character that embodies all the traits and characteristics of your perfect customer. And so what you do is you just answer a bunch of questions about that person. So think about your ideal customer and you answer like, what is their age range? Are they married? Are they single? Do they have kids and not have kids? What level of education do they have? Are they professional? Are they, blue collar? Like, where do they work? What are their hobbies? What TV shows? What book? So you go through this whole long list of that. So that's step one. Step two is something that we call the magic journal exercise. And the super quick version of this, and I'm happy to dive in more if you want to, but the super quick version is this, that you need to be so in tune with your clients, with your prospective customers, that you could write a page from their personal journal.
So you really need to understand who they are.
Exactly. That's exactly it. So if I were going to write one, if you, for example, were our ideal avatar, I would want to write about the challenges of growing a business while having young kids when daycares get closed or schools get closed, and what impact that has on the business and the decisions that have to get made because of those things. And how do you juggle schedules and running kids here and running kids there, plus keeping clients happy, right? I would want to be able to articulate those things into words as if you were writing that page. And here's the last thing I'll say about this, unless you want to dive more, but here's the last thing I would say. When we think about marketing to our customers, we often get very analytical. We get hung up on what service do we provide or what product do we provide, what's it going to do for them. And so we leave out a lot of emotion. But if you do the magic journal exercise and then you sit down to write your ad or to write your email, it's going to be vastly different because you're speaking from an emotional place instead of an analytical place.
And that's how you can connect better, in your opinion, to the customer compared to just looking at the numbers.
Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome. All right. Actually, that's beautiful the way you explained that. I do want to talk a little bit more. We might come back to it if we have time, but I want to talk about results-based marketing. So I did check out your website, and I know you guys are huge on results. Obviously, as an entrepreneur, results are the number one key for me. So when I see or hear results, I'm already like, okay, wait, let's get results, right? So, but besides getting results in different areas in business, what is the term results-based marketing used for, and how do you guys work with that type of marketing?
Yeah. So this is our language. This is what we we speak and we live every single day. We live and operate in an industry that is known for what we would call vanity metrics, things that make you feel good, that makes clients feel good, but really have no substance necessarily behind them. So when we start talking about impressions, and we start talking about reach, and we start talking about frequency, and we start talking about, even email open rates, we talk about all these wonderful things. At the end of the day, most people don't care if they have a 2% email open rate or a 98% email open rate. All they care about is, are our sales increasing? Are we hitting our growth revenue, right? Are we hitting those metrics? So for all of these other metrics that we can talk about, at the end of the day, most of them don't really matter. We could send 1 million people to your website, but if you don't get any sales from that, if you don't get any new clients from that, that's a complete waste of time, energy, effort. It's a vanity metric. So when we say we're a results-based marketing agency, what that means is this. We don't require long-term contracts. We tell all of our clients who start a process with us, give us 2 months. If by the end of 2 months, you're not happy with the direction we're going, if you're not seeing actual impactful, results taking place in your business, we don't want your money. We want you to go somewhere where they can get those types of results for you. So again, we believe in backing up what we say. So we're not going to force somebody into a long-term contract just because we can.
The results will speak for themselves. Now, for somebody who's listening and they're interested, and I know money and budgets are sometimes a sensitive subject for a business or entrepreneurs, but what is a rough budget what's a rough amount somebody needs to save up or have kind of put aside for marketing with your agency for those first 2 months?
Yeah, so the numbers vary greatly depending on what someone's trying to accomplish, right? So if it's a local business in a small town, those numbers are much smaller. So those numbers may be $1,500 a month. If it's someone who's doing regional, those numbers grow obviously, and the national is even bigger than that. So I would say a good entry point would probably be around the $1,500 a month mark.
Okay, very reasonable for a small business. That sounds great. All right, so one other thing I'm always curious about, in your opinion, from what you've seen with your customers, you've worked with many people, many different companies in different industries, but what's the common 3 things you see a business must do in order to see the quickest results? Did that question make sense? I worded it so weird.
Yeah, it did.
Okay.
So if you want to get results and you want to get them immediately, what I would say is step number 1 is get crystal clear about the who. And we talked about that through the customer avatar and through the magic journal. And when I say get crystal clear about the who, you have to be clear about what problem you are helping them solve or what outcome you are helping them reach. It's one of those 2 things. It doesn't matter what you sell. It's one of those 2 things. You've got to be crystal clear on what that is. The next thing is you've got to figure out what is the most direct way you can communicate with those people. So what happens so often in the marketing world, we market based on competition. We look around at our competitors and we say, oh, wow, their Instagram looks amazing. I need to up my Instagram game. Or, oh, they're brilliant on LinkedIn. I've got to up my LinkedIn game, right? Get better there. Instead, we need to look and say, where are these people that I can help them solve their problem or help them get the outcome that they want? Where are those people? Then the next part of that is, how can I most directly communicate with those people? So instead of spending, I'm making these numbers up, instead of spending 5 hours trying to craft the most, elegantly written LinkedIn post, instead, what if you picked up the phone? Instead, what if you went door to door and you spend those 5 hours actually talking to the people?
The right people.
The right people. So step 1 is get crystal clear about the who. Step 2 is figure out how you can get directly in front of them as quickly as possible. And then step 3 is this. Step 3 is remember that every single person you have that conversation with, so meaning we've identified the who, so we know exactly who they are. When we go have the conversations or when we do the initial outreach to them, remember that they may not be in the position or may not be ready to buy in that moment. But that does not mean that they're not going to buy at some point. So generally speaking, when we pitch our product or service, whatever it is that you offer, 5% or less, if you're doing outbound, in other words, you're going out and reaching out, 5% or less of people are actually going to be ready to buy right now. That means 95.
So don't get discouraged. You're not doing something wrong. You just have to keep going.
Keep going. But remember also that those 95% who may not be ready to buy today, because you've taken the time to get clear about who they are and you understand their problems so well, chances are they've got a friend, a colleague, a neighbor, a relative who is in the position to buy, who has the same problem. So don't be afraid to ask them for a connection.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you for clarifying that. Now, I know you have also worked on marketing a best-selling book called Effortless. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with this? Let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. So Effortless is the second book from Greg McKeown. His first book was a New York Times bestseller as well, called Essentialism. And so when Greg reached out and we began the conversation, what most people don't realize is that, the second book for a New York Times bestselling author, there's a lot of pressure on them for that second book to do as well as the first book. And so when he reached out, he was kind of feeling some of that internalized pressure. Some of it was coming from the publisher as well, obviously, because, it's a big book deal and they want it to do well. So the question becomes for anyone who's in this position is, who are the people, again, going back to what we just talked about, who are the people that are likely to buy this? And so we knew at that time, just for quick context, Greg's previous book had come out, I think, 5 or 6 years previously. So it had been out for quite some time, and he hadn't been doing much marketing. He'd been speaking and traveling and teaching the contents, but he had not been really overly active on social. So we began by reigniting his audience base, and we did that through exactly what I just said. We began by messaging every single person that was connected with him, asking them what their takeaways were from essentialism, and then asking them specific questions as it related to his new book that was coming out. So we began building a tribe. We then also looked for partnerships that we could leverage their audiences to spread his message for him. So there's so many other things that took place, but that's kind of high level, big picture.
Of course. Well, thank you for sharing that. And how was the pressure of that for you?
It was very high pressure. So the very first meeting after the meeting with Greg, the very next meeting we had was with me, and it was with Greg, and it was with several members of his publishing company, Penguin Random House. So several of their key team members were on the call. Their PR firm was on the call. His agent was on the call. And so the pressure was real. It was a very short launch window. I think it was about 8 weeks from the time we started working together until the book actually launched. And what's so interesting, though, it doesn't matter what you market, whether it's a book, whether it's a marketing service, whether it's a phone or a pen, it doesn't matter the thing. Marketing fundamentals are always the same.
Really? Okay, interesting. All right, so next question is you also have written a book. It's called Full Circle Marketing. Can you talk a little bit about being an author yourself and also the two key takeaways from that book, if you can only pick two?
Sure. So first of all, what I would say is that writing a book is a wonderful exercise in self-discipline. To force yourself to sit down and write on a regular basis, it creates so much self-discipline, right? Because it requires that discipline, because a book is something that for most people will not have payoff for a long time until the future, right? So if it takes you a year to write a book, you're looking at least 12 months before you see any form of payoff from all of that effort. So number one, it's a great exercise in self-discipline. So even if you...
And patience, I guess.
Yeah, even if you don't want to write a book, but you want to improve self-discipline, write a book. It'll help you learn that. The other thing would be, in terms of the two key takeaways, would be this. Number one, that we live in a world where there are 6.6 billion people on the planet with this little device that I'm holding up called a smartphone. That means there are 6.5 billion people who have the ability in an instant to share their experience with you and me, our businesses. And yet as marketers, we often don't give any time or attention to using our skills and abilities to convincing our existing customers to become evangelists for our brands. So that's
kind of like brand ambassadors.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's key takeaway number one. Key takeaway number two is this, that when it comes to marketing, there's a big difference between marketing strategy and marketing tactic.
What's the difference?
Most of what you see entrepreneurs doing are tactics. So I mentioned earlier kind of how we look around at our competitors and we say, oh, wow, they're doing great on this platform, so I need to do great on that platform. Those are all tactics. Strategy is where we understand how every piece is connected and leads to a specific outcome. That is the key. So when marketing is done well, it makes sales unnecessary. So when our marketing is strategic, what that means is by the time people reach out to call, say in our business, by the time they reach out to call or email us to have a consultation, they are ready to buy. We don't have to convince them. We don't have to persuade them. The marketing has done the selling for us. And that is the difference between tactical marketing and strategic marketing.
So you talked about the difference. I don't think I'm so fully clear on it. So can you give another example? So if I'm doing, let's say, phone calls, right? Cold calling as my strategy. Is that a strategy or is that a tactic?
Yep, that would be a tactic. So if we want to be strategic about that, I love the Stephen Covey thing, which is begin with the end in mind. So what are we trying to accomplish? Well, we're doing cold outreach and we want them to book a needs assessment, maybe where our discovery call, maybe that's what we're after. So we then go backwards a step and we say, okay, what has to happen just before the needs assessment or the discovery call? Well, before that happens, before they're willing to do that, they have to believe that they're going to receive enough value from that call that it's going to be worth their time. So the question then becomes, what can we do to demonstrate to them that this call is going to be valuable to them? So we say, okay, well, we're going to need to send them some case studies or testimonials from other people who may not even booked with us, our services, but they received value from the needs discovery call. So then we go a step further back up. So we're working backwards here. So we know we need to send them something that builds trust, that establishes the value. We go back up and say, okay, what happened right before that? Well, right before that, we captured their name and email address because we need to email them. So we can move back up. What did we do to get to the point to capture their name and email address? Well, when we cold called them, we didn't just say, hey, I do marketing consulting. Would you like to be a client? Instead, we figure out, okay, if I want them to give me their name and email address, I need something of value that I can give them in order to get their name and email address. So maybe I have a case study that's specifically written for their industry. So I would call and say, hey, look, I know you're in the coffee shop business, and we worked with the coffee shop across town, and we grew their revenue by 200%. Here's the 5 exact things that we did. Would you mind if I send this over to you so you can look at it? Like, no pressure. You can take it. You can use it.
Yeah.
You don't need. So again, strategically says that we're not just grabbing a thing and doing a thing, that we're engineering the entire process from the end first and working backwards.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing the details of that. Now, marketing in today's world, digital world, a lot of businesses are also only digital, not local. As far as like online stores, if it's products, services, a lot of people are still doing a lot of virtual. Now, let's talk about websites. So I know you guys work on websites, you specialize in it, you talk about it. So first of all, what are your thoughts about websites, and how do you know if your website is up to par or it's not? So, I open up my website right now. I'm not a web developer. I don't know too much about SEO stuff. How do I know if it's actually doing okay or if it's designed well or not?
Sure. One of the simplest things that anyone can do to understand if their website is actually resonating with their audience would be just to take a screenshot, like a picture of the homepage of your website. And then what you would want to do is you want to do kind of a blind test to people who are in your target market. And so let me tell you how we did this, and it'll explain how you can do the same. So one time we were approached by a businessman. We'd done work for several of his companies. He also owned a cattle ranch, raised very expensive cattle, and he wanted to build a website for his cattle ranch. And so we go to him and we're talking through who the audience is, right? He's selling cattle to other ranchers, and we bring him a design. It's very kind of Western, and he hated it. He said it was terrible. He wanted it to be very corporate, like all of his other businesses. And so we told him that was a mistake. We didn't want to go that direction. I said, here's what we'll do. We'll go to your next cattle auction and we'll survey people there. So what we did was we designed 3 or 4 different web pages, single pages. We printed them out, laminated them, and then we walked around and said, hey, you mind if I ask you a quick question? Which of these 4 speaks to you most, right? Which resonates with you most? So you could do the same thing. You don't have to necessarily print it out, but you could send a screenshot to people who don't really know a lot about you, but say, what does this website say to you? What is it communicating to you, even if you don't read any words? So that's a great way to start. It's a great way to remove our own biases from what's there. And then the other thing is this, that there's 5 quick questions that we teach you should ask on every page of your website. So question number 1 is who's here. So who is on each page is different. So in other words, the person on your homepage is different than the person on your about page, right? Mentally, they've shifted from I'm just browsing to now I'm really drilling in to see who you are. That's a different person than the person that's on your checkout page or on your contact us page, right? As their mindset shifts, as they move through your process, as they get to know you more, they're a different quote unquote person. So number 1, who is on this page? Number 2, what do I want them to do on this page? Number 3, when do I want them to do that? Is it today? Is it next week, next month, next year? Like, when do I want them to take this action? Next is how do I want them to do that? Is it click? Is it call? Is it book something on the calendar? Like, how do I want them to do it? And then the final question, most important, is why should they do it? We know why we want them to do it, but why should they actually take the action that we want them to take?
And the answer to that question was what you answered earlier, is how are we solving a problem, or what was the second one?
Yeah, how are we solving a problem, or how are we helping them achieve an outcome or a goal that they're after?
Awesome. Thank you again for sharing all those details. Now, what are some 3 common mistakes that you see on a website?
3 common mistakes. Number 1, that when you go to the website, you have no clue who they exist to serve, right? It feels generic. It doesn't speak to the audience. And when I say speak, I'm not necessarily speaking of language here. I'm speaking of aesthetics, the look, the feel. Is it resonating? Kind of like we were talking about branding earlier, right? Is the brand resonating with the audience? Number 2 is the use of stock images. It's another huge mistake. So if you want to be different, if you want to stand out, you've got to move away from stock images. That's the second one. And then the third one would be no clear call to action.
From the home page or every page?
Every page needs a specific call to action. That call to action will vary page to page, right? Every page, we're not going to say, click here to schedule your consultation. It could say, click here to discover how we served other businesses like you. Or it could say, click here to learn more about us and our partners. Or, you know what I mean? So the call to action varies based on the page that we're on.
Okay, awesome. Now, let's talk a little bit about social media. So another big one. People have love-hate relationships with social media. I feel like a lot of times when we are not successful with gaining likes, followers, interaction, that's when it's very discouraging. And in the past, like some marketers or some people who specialize in social media influencers have said, you know, consistency is key, just keep going. But not getting discouraged is really difficult, right? How would you advise somebody who wants to grow their social following but is having a hard time to approach it?
Sure. So I would start by saying this, that most people actually don't do social media marketing. Most people do digital media marketing. So the key is in the words used. The word social means dialogue. It means back and forth. Digital is one-way communication. So if you were to think about it this way, digital marketing is a megaphone, right? We show up, we broadcast our message out to the world, and that is it. Whereas social media is like a telephone. It's like a back and forth dialogue. So first of all, most people approach social media marketing wrong. They show up and they throw up. They show up, they say their message, and then they complain that no one responds, no one engages. So, you know, it's kind of like, in many ways, it's like karma. What you put out is what you get back, right? So if you're only showing up and throwing up, if you're not out there engaging with other people, commenting on their stuff, showing up for them, why do you expect other people to show up for you? And so that is a huge mistake that people make, is they're doing the thing and they're frustrated because they're not getting engagement, and yet they are not showing up and engaging with other people.
I see. Now, how about the advertising? So the social media advertising, like the paid advertising, instead of just using it as a social platform to kind of like be present. What are your thoughts about that as far as marketing?
Yeah, we do a lot of paid advertising on social media, but here's a warning. Do not click the little blue button that says boost post. When you click that button is designed to make you feel like you're getting results. So they're going to show you all kinds of metrics that make you feel good. In other words, you reached X thousands of people. There was X hundreds of engagements with the post. The problem with that button is that button does not give you the ability to dial in the targeting that you need to dial in for your marketing. So when you use Facebook's free tool, it's Ads Manager, when you use that instead, you can dial in all of those other things. And when you learn to do that, the results you can get are incredible.
Now, I know on your website or on your profile, I noticed that you covered the topic of why marketing does not work and how can you fix that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are experiencing marketing and it's quote unquote not working for you, the first thing I would say is you have to step back and you have to look at what you're doing in terms of quote unquote marketing. I would make a list of all of those things on a sheet of paper. So I'm doing social media posts. I'm doing email campaigns. Maybe I'm doing, message outreach on LinkedIn, whatever all those things are. And then what I want you to do is I want you to ask yourself, how are these things connected? In other words, how have I engineered these things to work in unison together as opposed to individual standalone strategies? So again, when we think of marketing, we often think of all these tactics, and you have to have the tactics, but if you don't have the cohesive strategy in place, your marketing will never work the way it could work. because again, you're throwing a bunch of things at the wall and hoping it sticks.
I see. Now, for our listeners, if they want to take their first step towards improving their marketing or learning about their branding, what would you advise them to do after this podcast?
This answer is not very sexy, but it's 100% what I would recommend. And that is, I would recommend go spend time with your customers. Go spend time with your prospective customers. See what their lives are like. Experience everything through their lens and through their eyes, not through your own. Because it was, I think, Earl Nightingale who said this many, many years ago, that if you want the most surefire way to rapidly grow your business, schedule an hour a day to do nothing more than to think about your customers. And I truly believe that there's so much magic in that.
So what are some ways we can do that? So we literally can ask them for a coffee date. That's like the first thing that comes to mind when we say spend time with somebody. But what are some ways we can do that?
Yeah, so that's a great way. Spend time with them via coffee, via lunch. Offer to do Zoom calls. Ask them about their life, right? So often we get so focused on our product or our service. And so when we think about these types of interviews or these types of conversations, our default is to think through, well, I'm going to ask them, like, what are you doing for marketing? And what are you doing on social? And what are you doing on all those things? Instead, ask them about their family. Ask them what it's like to try to grow a business while maintaining their family. Ask them about the challenges of raising funds or the challenges of meeting payroll, right? So we want to really dive into this emotional connection with them, because what that's going to teach us is it's going to teach us how do we position our product or services in such a way that it speaks to their true pain points.
So basically try to become friends with your customers to
Absolutely.
Really know them. All right, awesome. We are running short on time. So before we end, please tell our listeners, first, thank you so much for the vast information that you gave us. I think there's so many amazing points that we can all take away and take immediate action right after the podcast, or at least start thinking about it. So thank you for that. But before we end, can you please tell our listeners where can they find you, and also what are your last words of encouragement?
Sure. Thank you again for the wonderful conversation today. I've enjoyed our chat. The simplest place to find us is our website, uglymugmarketing.com. Email addresses, phone numbers, social, all that's in one spot. And in terms of last words of encouragement, I would just say this, that, the entrepreneurial journey is a challenging journey. It is lots of emotional challenges, lots of mental challenges, lots of financial challenges, and that, as discouraging as this initial part may sound, that the problems never go away. It's just that you get better problems to deal with as you grow your business. So the way I love to think about this is that the things that are happening today that are setbacks or challenges, I love to flip the question and say, what does this now make possible for me? How is this serving me in this moment? And how is this particular event preparing me for the leader I need to be in the future?
Wow, that's very beautiful and so inspiring. Very great way to end the podcast. Again, Wayne, thank you so much for your time. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in every week. And until next time, bye. Thank you for listening. Please rate and review this podcast. Follow and engage with us on social media under the Yegi Project. And if you're interested in being a guest, email info@theyegiproject.com. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes.